Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, I don't know, I was off the grid all weekend. Did anything happen? Like, Dawn Staley win another national title, John Calipari leave for Arkansas. Like, I didn't miss any details. Those are just hypothetical things I'm throwing out there. Pretty quiet weekend.
Yeah, that's like I woke up from a dream or whatever. Coma explained this to me. I'll get to talk a little bit on Staley later, but I will say this. This might be because I'm now like a take meister. But the first thing I thought about, whatever the what? You're already laughing at me.
Take meister?
I don't even know what to call what I do. I'm not a personality. Anyway, so I was like, the first thing I thought about, right? Whenever I heard this Calipari news at midnight, I had to go check on my UK buddies. But I thought to myself, you know who I underratedly feel bad for here, right? Because there's one person that this is actually bad news for, right? Because Kentucky fans are happy, Arkansas fans are happy, right? Barnhart saved. So Barnhart is the AD at Kentucky, and he was having to deal with that weird buyout that he was trying to manage or not manage or whatever. Hunter Yurachek has kind of like done a big flex about like, am I the best athletic director? But there's one guy that is the only win-win-lose here. It's Sam Pittman. I felt bad for the guy because I'll tell you what, you look at Arkansas's baseball team, they're number one, they're competing for a championship. You look at that move to get Calipari, you look at the move to bring in Bobby Petrino, and you feel like Sam Pittman's like, okay, well, Hunter Yurachek has proven he's going to get in. He's trying to chase national championships. So the what's it called? Not Muscleman. Yeah. The Must stuff was like such a perfect kind of like foil for Pittman, because it was like, okay, well, now everyone's mad at him. I can go be in silence. Oh, he left for USC. Aren't you glad you still have me? Now it's like, oh, actually, I'm kind of just still here. Yeah.
Counterpoint.
Okay.
Our guy Sam Pittman's on borrowed time. Life is good.
Life rules for him, yeah.
Sam Pittman's never had a bad day in his life. All right?
Facts.
Even 7-3, Sam Pittman did not have himself a bad day. Mm-hmm. He went home. He cracked himself a cold beer. He relaxed. He moved on like that. Mm-hmm. Sam Pittman's going to keep him moving. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. I don't think he's a loser in this whole thing. Now, obviously, there's going to be a whole lot of people that when football games actually start, they say, Hunter Yurachek, why'd you bring him back? Or alternatively, Hunter Yurachek, thank you for giving him another chance. So I don't know that his life changes a whole lot, but he is certainly number 2 in terms of popularity on the Arkansas campus among head coaches. Can you picture Cal and Sam Pittman sitting down and having a meal together even?
Exactly what I was thinking. I was imagining like, because the coaches do those like Rotary clubs or whatever, they're all on the stage, and you got, baseball, you got like, they just keep making these great hires. It's just like Calipari, Sam Pittman. What are those guys talking? I'm sure they're good boys. Like they're it's not like they would be, couldn't be worse than him and Stoops, right? But yeah, I think it's like super interesting, and it's such a interesting foreshadowing the other day, because like we kind of both stopped. We were like, is Arkansas a basketball school? Yep. And it's like, wait, actually, I'm not going to say they stole Kentucky's coach, because again, that's a little bit of a mutual like Scott Satterfield situation, but they did get Kentucky's coach and give him a huge contract, and Kentucky was seen as the only team in the SEC that was truly punching at that weight class as far as, can we go get, NBA coaches? Can we go get these guys? And so, yeah, I think Arkansas, they might be trying to be a basketball school. They saw Nate Oates. They said, hey, how about this?
Stole is probably the wrong verb. I don't even like the verb poach, because if Kentucky wanted to keep Cal, they would have been able to. But yeah, it was a fascinating development. I'm not going to lie. When I first saw that, like right before I went to bed, I'm like, and I can't remember who first reported this. But you see it and you're like, probably not. But if Matt Jones is even tweeting about this, that's significant. Texting my brother about this. He's like, for real? And then middle of the night, Claire wakes up. She needs to be fed at like 3 a.m. or something like that. Obviously, I get on my phone, look at Twitter, which is about the worst idea that one can do in the middle of the night. Yeah. And I was up for about an hour, mind racing of just, oh my God, like I can't quite believe this actually happened. So not the best night of sleep for your boy reading into that news. We're not a basketball podcast, so we're not going to talk a whole lot more about that. If I had to guess, I would say there will be more basketball talk in Lad or Last of the Week, which we will get to a bit later. We also have a new idea that we're going to do called Pitch Me. We have an image, a graphic that has already been done by a certain Will Ogburn to be able to get that rolling out. So a new segment that we're going to explain. And we also have a great interview. Speaking of Arkansas, Luke Hasz is going to join us, the Alabama the Drum Team member, just 19 years young. I think he's the youngest guy we've ever had on the show. 19 years young. I mean, he'll be 20 soon.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of like freshman media availability. And yeah, I mean, Arkansas, and I hate to be negative about the Pittman thing, so I will say Arkansas is the best fan base to be right now. It's not even close. I don't know who's second place, but when you think about everything they got going for them right now, it's like, oh, there's another Arkansas guy. It's just irrelevant to the stuff we were just talking about, you know?
Yeah, there's something to be said for it. Arkansas fans have had some tough times recently, but still a positive spin after what was just probably a really frustrating development to see Muss head off to USC. Like I said, we will get to more thoughts on that in Lad of the Week. But first, Will, because we're a football podcast and it is spring, probably should talk about spring football. It's been a little bit on the back burner, back burner. So here's what I want to do today. I want to be fair to Cam Coleman. If you did not see, probably, first of all, I don't blame you if all the things that happened over the weekend in the SEC, you didn't necessarily get your eyes onto the Auburn spring game. But if you did see it, you know what I'm talking about and probably where I'm heading with this conversation. Auburn did indeed play a spring game, and the star of that spring game was Cam Coleman, who decided, let me just go off, win 8A MVP honors, 92 yards and a score before I head off to my high school prom. I really hope this isn't the second coming of Jake Bentley. We can't have that.
Prom talk.
Prom talk is great. It's spring. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Once it happens, we need to be able to move on from it. But yeah, obviously, if you were paying attention to this, you saw the former A&M commit, the late Auburn flip. He has tons of buzz right now. The 5-star wideout, many are hoping is going to be at the center of a passing game progression in year 2 under Hugh Freeze. He is the second highest rated Auburn recruit in 24/7 Sports era, behind only Byron Cowart. I mean, goodness gracious, that's perspective for you, which I didn't even realize he's on the Bears. So reason to be a fan. Maybe practice squad, maybe actual roster. Not sure. TBD on that one. Bears are loaded. Probably don't even need them. But if you watch Cam Coleman, you know why he's got people talking. The first big play that he made was on a ball that bowl game hero Hank Brown threw about 52, 53 yards right into the outstretched arms of Coleman. It took you a second to pick up on that. I said bowl game hero Hank Brown because people forget Auburn got smashed by Maryland, but Hank Brown came in forward passes.
That was very funny. I'm also laughing at just preparing myself for a guy being named Hank Brown.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Love that name. Yeah.
If you want nobody to be the quarterback at Auburn, you should want Hank Brown to be the quarterback, just so we get to say Hank Brown over and over. I love a 2-syllable full name. Always hits. It really does. But you see Cam Coleman and why this guy has been getting so much attention throughout spring camp, throughout his recruiting process, the whole deal, the body control that you saw from him on that play wherein he's diving for this long pass. I mean, this is the type of stuff that Auburn fans have been starving for, and you could hear it based on the reaction alone from the Auburn crowd at Jordan Hare, especially when you understand the context of last year's woeful passing attack. It makes sense why Cam Coleman has a lot of excitement. On the broadcast, Taylor Zarzour said, the speed, the hype, the athleticism, the mentality of a player they've made no bones about it, they believe can be great. I'm on board with that. Let me get that on the record first, because what I'm about to say is going to sound like I'm not on board with Cam Coleman being really freaking good. I am on board with Cam Coleman being awesome. I watched all the plays he made, even the plays that he didn't make, where you could tell that Hank Brown was locked in on him and no one else. He had a throw on that same drive where it looked like he was trying to get the safety to bite over the top, but he didn't. And Coleman got this target in double coverage that he probably shouldn't have gotten. And Hank Brown just kind of ends up throwing the ball out of bounds in the end zone. Didn't really go anywhere, but still it speaks to how much attention that guy is getting. There's another instance where Freeze is mic'd up and he's calling out the play as it's happening. It's an RPO. It's a downfield shot to Cam Coleman and single coverage on the outside. He nearly makes the play with the DB who never really turned around to be able to play the ball. And CD was on the call for it. And he even let out a little bit of like an ooh. And if CD does that while watching a receiver, noteworthy, very noteworthy. Freeze even called for DPI because that's what you do in a spring game. If you're an offensive minded head coach, it's get the offense, whatever it can. They started like 27-0 in this game. Like spring game scoring systems aren't worth the time, the brain space to try and figure out. We talked about that before, about trying to empty your brain with this. You want to have as an efficient of a brain as humanly possible and try and empty out all the negative, useless things that are in it. I will not waste brain space trying to figure out spring scoring systems. They are not worth my time. But he had another play where it's a 7-yard hitch. He comes back to the ball. He actually slips, and he still ends up making the grab. And, of course, the other highlight was the touchdown, a play where Peyton Thorne is looking at him from the moment he gets off the line. I mean, turns left, and he's like, yep, I'm going to watch this develop. I'm going to get single coverage down the sideline. And Coleman's concentration allows him to come down with this ball, to be able to fight, to keep it, to rip it away from the DB, and then turn into the end zone for the first touchdown of the spring game, which happened with like 8 minutes left to play, which probably tells you a little bit about Auburn's offense and probably a little bit about Auburn's defense as well and who's winning that battle right now. You can't teach the body control. You can't teach the 6'3" frame. Great stuff. I hope that Cam Coleman is indeed as great as Auburn expects him to be. I would not bet against it. What I would bet against is him being great as a true freshman. That's the conversation I want to have today, just to keep everything in check. As much as I would love to be able to say, yes, now is the time to buy stock in a player like Coleman, history actually tells us that you're better off waiting until they have a few quiet games as a true freshman, and then that's when you actually buy stock in them. If we're treating this like true stocks, not just like, hey, watch out for this guy. Unless you are Amari Cooper or Calvin Ridley, that stretch of a few quiet games in a row, call it the freshman wall, just whatever you want to call it, it is inevitable for these guys. Speaking of those two, they're part of a pretty exclusive club, a club that I don't think a lot of people realize just how exclusive it is. In the last 15 seasons, Will, here are the list of SEC wide receivers who have recorded 900 receiving yards as a true freshman. So that's excluding redshirt freshmen like 2012 Mike Evans, excluding tight ends and stuff, okay? So that list, 2012 Amari Cooper, 2015 Calvin Ridley, 2015 Christian Kirk. I love me some Christian Kirk.
Yeah, we are both Christian Kirk's fans. That's a guy that, he's useful like in the pros, like if you have him in fantasy or whatever. But yeah, if you go back and like watch him, it's like, did we underrate this guy? Because he's nasty.
Christian Kirk was so nasty. I wanted the Bears to draft him so badly. Such an interchangeable player, like was never going to fail as a pro, and now is doing really good things with the Jaguars as well, but was awesome from the moment he showed up SEC ready. And that guy looked the part, was so versatile for those A&M teams that I know fell off towards the end of each of those seasons with someone, but was still an awesome player. That's the list though. And I actually dug into this a couple months ago when I was trying to keep things in check for 5-star receiver Ryan Williams, who Kalen DeBoer was able to land at Alabama, his biggest recruit that he's been able to land so far. Unless you want to be like, oh, Jalen Milroe is actually the biggest recruit that Kalen DeBoer has landed. Want to do that thing?
Caden Proctor.
Caden Proctor. There you go. You see. So Auburn fans, I'm not picking on you. Okay, I'm not picking on you. You just have the guy that's relevant today because of how good he looked in a scrimmage. I chose 15 years as the sample size, not with my intent to exclude Julio Jones hitting that mark in 2008 because he did, but because I'm trying to focus on a time in which it feels like the passing numbers have boomed and we're really more comfortable now than we were 20, 30 years ago with true freshmen getting in and making an immediate impact. So it doesn't really feel fair to say like, oh, in the last 70 years of SEC football, look at how few freshmen. This is 0.0001% that have done this. It doesn't really feel fair. So we're going to try and stick within this era. It makes a little bit more sense. Also, again,
can I say one thing really quick?
Yeah, far away.
I was furiously typing because I was trying to shoehorn this guy in here because you're right. Freshman didn't play for a long time. The single season of Carlos Alvarez when he was a sophomore, it was his first year. Insane at Florida. This guy.
What were his final numbers that his first season, but his sophomore, I guess redshirt freshman season, that would be right.
You could not play as a freshman. So his first season, this man had 1,300 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns in 1969. So that's the thing. To your point, freshmen didn't play. So if you want to be kind of like disingenuous, you could be like, oh my gosh, this only happened twice. But I just want to give this guy some shine because if you can get 1,300 yards as a sophomore, you could probably get at least 800 in the 60s as a freshman. So in terms of a first-year player, just want to put his name out there a little bit.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Like, we're going to get into it. Seriously, with receiver maybe more than any other position, history says that you can be so quiet that first year, and then year two, it's like, boom, this guy is it. And there's a list of guys that I'm going to get to in a bit that have done exactly that. So maybe, but like at the same time, I don't know. Maybe it would have been a really tough go. And once you learn those like 2 or 3 moves that you're like, all right, I know when I hit this high point of the route, I'm going to be able to turn to this because the explosion, the savviness, the way that I can look at a corner and tell which way his body's leaning, like these little things that you pick up on after having those reps, and you know that you have to do those things. Maybe that so much of that happens year 2, and that's part of this conversation. But obviously, a great first season in the SEC nonetheless. Was catching passes from Spurrier, I would assume, then 69, right?
I need to go back and figure that out. I just had his like receiving numbers, but that was a changing of eras for sure. It was a good team.
Yeah. So again, just talking about wide receivers here. So we're going to exclude the unicorn, borderline human being that is Brock Bowers in his 2021 season, what he did as a true freshman in 15 games. Okay, we're excluding that. But think about that. There are so many great receivers who have come into the SEC as blue chip recruits who have failed to hit 900 receiving yards as a true freshman. That's like 69 receiving yards per game in a 13-game season. Okay, and that's what we're talking about here. So we're not saying you got to average a 100-yard season or anything like that. Usually about half a dozen SEC receivers average that in a given season, but for the most part, they are not freshmen. That's basically your first and second team all SEC guys, if we're saying like the 6 most productive SEC receivers in a given season. Since Calvin Ridley hit 1,000 receiving yards as a true freshman back in 2015, the only true freshman receiver in the SEC to hit 800 yards was Jalen Waddle. That's it. He had 848. That was a nice little celebration. Go subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube, and you can see Will do the waddle every time I say the waddle, or don't. If that's not your thing, that's fine.
I love that celebration. He's so cool. I love Waddle.
It's adorable. I hope we don't kill it like we've killed the Gritty. I really don't. It's heading that way. That's fine. Whatever. But yeah, he was awesome. He was so unbelievably good. And I remember being at that opener that they had against Louisville and just being like, Jalen Waddle is pretty freaking insane. He's going to be a thing for the next 3 years in the SEC. So in the last 8 seasons, though, the best season by a true freshman receiver in the SEC was a guy who averaged 56.5 receiving yards per game. That's what Waddle averaged that year. If you told an Auburn fan right now, at peak Cam Coleman hype to this point so far, because we've at least seen him do it on an actual football field, although it was a scrimmage. If you told an Auburn fan right now, hey, Cam Coleman will average 56.5 receiving yards per game as a true freshman, that would probably sound really underwhelming. They'd be like, that's it? That guy's got a chance to be the number 1 receiver on our team. What do you mean 56.5 receiving yards per game? But in reality, history shows us that would be no small feat, especially when we have the context of Auburn, which is an important part of this. In the last 15 years, here are the guys who averaged 56.5 receiving yards per game in an Auburn uniform. Seth Williams did it twice, did it in 2019, 2020. Anthony Schwartz also did it in the 2020 COVID season. Ryan Davis did it 2017.
If we got Oregon Bo Nix with those receivers, man. Oh, those receivers were nasty.
Seth Williams is an interesting case because I think he was awesome, but I don't know how much, I don't know that his separation skills would have made him this 1,300 yard guy. I don't. He was a really, really good player. Schwartz is the one that's really intriguing because of obviously his world-class speed and his ability to stretch the field. Yeah, because everybody assumes that Bo Nix was just captain check down. And if you actually look at some of his downfield stuff, the accuracy really improved. So I like Anthony Schwartz for that. That's a really good point. Ryan Davis did it 2017. Duke Williams did it 2014. Sammy Coates did it 2013 and 2014. Emory Blake did it 2012. Darvin Adams did it 2009 and 2010. That's 10 instances of a guy in an Auburn uniform averaging 56.5 receiving yards in the season in the last 15 years. But the only guy that I just named right there who wasn't draft eligible, who did that, Seth Williams. That was the guy. 2019, he did that as a sophomore. That's relevant because even in a place that has recruited really well, I think we would consider Auburn would you say it's fair to say Auburn is a tier 2 recruiting school in terms of the type of talent that they bring in on a yearly basis. Not tier one where it's consistently going to be top 5 classes, but they're almost always in that like 7 to 15 type range. That's been the standard the last 15 years.
So I agree with you. I do want to make an additional point. I think I might have texted you about this. One of my big like conspiracy things I've like talked about with Marler is that like Auburn has just never produced good receivers like ever. Like you just talked about Seth Williams. You know, he's their 4th all-time leading receiver in 3 seasons, one of them being COVID. Like, so I'll say this. If you remove the receiver position, they actually, you can kind of go down and be like, wow, they really have studs. Like if you kind of go through the years, there's a guy at like every position. This is an S tier 5-star recruit, but those guys aren't receivers. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag with Auburn because like defensive talent, oh my gosh, you know?
I'm glad you brought that up, Will, because it's startling. And I don't even know if the most diehard Auburn fans realize how startling some of this stuff is when you put it in perspective here. This is a program that we know for the last 15 years has been more run heavy. Okay. Disclaimer. Auburn has been a run first offense for the vast majority of this time. And they've been able to do that. Obviously did that throughout the Gus Malzahn era. I don't know, whatever the hell that offense was that Brian Harsin was trying to run. I guess it was run heavy, but it was something. And last year, a year 0 offense, if I have ever seen one. We don't talk enough about how Auburn has not had a top 40 passing offense since 1997. Top 40. That's like top 1/3 in FBS. They have not done that since 1997. The Bulls still have another title to win. All right. We don't talk enough about how Auburn has not
the Bulls still had another title to win. That was good.
Had to bring it home, Will. Had to bring it home. Auburn hasn't had a receiver drafted in the first 2 rounds since Tim Carter 2002. That guy got drafted based on speed, not production, because he had 570 yards his senior season. I don't remember. I'm not going to pretend that I remember Tim Carter, watching him a little bit before my time. Auburn's last first-round receiver was Chris Woods in 1984. But I'm not even sure that I can count him because that was in the supplemental draft.
Oh, man.
So Auburn's last first-round receiver in the normal NFL draft was Terry Beasley in 1972. Terry Beasley's a really sad Google. I don't recommend doing that. Not worth your time. Let's take it a step further. Auburn's last first-team All-SEC wide receiver at season's end was second-teamer Sammy Coates, 2014. It's been a decade. He is the only All-SEC receiver Auburn has had during this 15-year stretch, and he's the only Auburn All-SEC wide receiver in the 21st century. To find another first-team All-SEC wide receiver from Auburn, you have to go all the way back to Frank Sanders in 1994. That's 30 years ago since Auburn's last first-team All-SEC wide receiver, okay? And I even was like, okay, coaches or AP, like either one of these things.
Please, somebody help me.
I mean,
this is a team that had a Heisman-winning quarterback, by the way, and had several other good quarterbacks. Like Jarrett Stidham, I think, is still in the NFL. Bo Nix will be in the NFL. They will have Cam's out of the NFL technically, so I guess they'll never have 3, but they'll have 2 next year.
Yeah. So think about that. That is why I think when you see Cam Coleman make a big-time play, and you hear Auburn fans who are just like, oh my God, it's not that they've never seen good receivers before, but it's the desire to want this guy to be the guy. I get it. I totally get it. Auburn lately has just needed guys, okay? Not stars, just guys that can move the chains. History says that there are true freshmen who can do that in the SEC, but it's really difficult. It still is. Look at the SEC's first-round receivers during the 2020s, right? So Jameson Williams, 6 catches, 112 yards, but that was at Ohio State. Traylon Burks, 29 catches, 475 yards, 0 TDs, but that was Chad Morris. Jamar Chase, 23 catches, 313 yards. Jalen Waddle, 45 catches, 848 yards. Again, he's the outlier. Devontae Smith, 8 catches, 160 yards. Kadarius Toney, 15 catches, 152 yards. Henry Ruggs, 12 catches, 229 yards. Jerry Jeudy, 14 catches, 264 yards. Justin Jefferson, 0 catches, 0 yards. He wore number 32. He got the last scholarship that year. That is an average I love Justin Jefferson.
Sorry.
I love Justin Jefferson. Love the story. Love everything.
Yep.
That is an average among that group right there. The SEC's first round receivers of the 2020s, many of whom did not exhaust their eligibility and were good as sophomores, were good as juniors, whatever. That is an average true freshman season. 17 catches for 284 yards. That's it. That's like a splash play a game. That's all we're talking about here. These are the guys that are the best of the best. And even for them, it's a struggle to be good immediately in this conference. Judy's a great example here because Judy was the MVP of the spring game back in 2017 at Bama. And that's the time when you've got pre-draft Calvin Ridley. Obviously, that big stud class of freshman receivers at Alabama had just arrived. So, like, there's talent there, but they're just kind of still figuring out what things look like. He had a grab in that spring game that was actually even better than one of the ones that Cam Coleman made. That was just absolutely insane, where he just goes over the top of a guy and just plucks it out of the air. And you're like, who is this alien? And that was, a sign that Jerry Jeudy was going to be really, really good. And if you bought stock then, right after that spring game, you're probably really upset that he had a true freshman season, that he only had 4 games with multiple catches. That probably somewhere in the midst of one of those quiet games, the inevitable quiet stretch, was the best time to buy stock in Jerry Jeudy. He ended up being a phenomenal college player. He obviously won the Biletnikoff as a sophomore, same as Jamar Chase the following year. Those are two guys who freshman year, you're kind of like, you look good, but you're not stepping into this conference and taking it over. And then boom, as sophomores, you're like, okay, you guys have figured it out. You're very, very good. We need to be giving you your flowers, and you are worthy of everything that we thought you could be worthy of. So I think about a lot of times these spring games and trying to keep things in check as much as possible because of an example like a Jai Hall. Okay. Specifically, I think of Joe Tess belting out a Jai Hall's name like he was catching passes in a playoff game.
Yep. And that was the most I have heard a Jai Hall's name that game.
Unfortunately, that was Apex Mountain for Jai Hall's college career, which as of right now, I believe is stuck in neutral. But you get it. Like, we need to remember that even when these guys go off, even when they come in with so much hype and build up, there are a lot of hurdles that are left to clear, and some of which are in their control and some of which aren't. I mean, it's just like, it's so easy though to get caught up in a few of those plays and a few of these comments, and you hear Hugh Freeze saying, yeah, I think this guy changes us. Like, there is a reason why Hugh Freeze last year, when we kept saying, why don't they just become a service academy? Why don't they just become a team that runs the ball 60 times per game and doesn't care about it? It's because you try and get the Cam Colemans of the world, and it's really hard to get the Cam Colemans of the world when you're trying to flip them in December, and he looks at the box score and he's like, you threw the ball less than anybody in college football. I am not coming to play for you. That's why you do things like this, and that is why you stick through very difficult offensive times, because you need to get those guys in the door if you're ever going to take that next step. If Auburn is ever going to not be a joke in the passing department, it's going to be because guys like Cam Coleman pop. So what's the best case scenario then? Like, I'm not trying to say like this guy's going to be a bust, this guy's going to have a really bad first year. I don't think it's fair to say, hey, this guy is going to be Amari Cooper, this guy's going to be Calvin Ridley as a true freshman. Like, no, that should not be the standard for anyone as far as I'm concerned. Shouldn't be the standard for Ryan Matthews either. Think more like Evan Stewart, George Pickens. 50 catches, 600 to 700 yards. That's best case scenario, I think, for a guy like this. Make some of those jaw-dropping plays, as you figure out like how to get separation, learn some of those tricks of the trade by, not just getting by on your physical ability with your size and your speed and stuff like that. Learn what it actually means to line up across from a stud, draft-eligible SEC corner and win those battles week in, week out, and then we can talk. If Cam Coleman does that, I'll be unbelievably impressed. Like, if he has 52 catches for 650 yards as a true freshman, 13 games, I'll be like, dang, I'm setting a very high ceiling for this guy year 2. But as we talk about year 1, anything more, expecting anything more is unfair, even when they do things like that in a spring game performance before prom. Of course, a lot of Auburn is going to depend in this passing game on whether or not they get the quarterback situation figured out. As I wrote last year, I would have rather gotten my wisdom teeth out than watch Auburn attempt to throw a forward pass. I think with Cam Coleman, I will opt to watch Auburn throw passes instead of get my wisdom teeth out.
Yep.
But maybe that's just my realistic expectation and not so much the expectation of Auburn fans after seeing what they saw from him on Saturday.
Man, yeah, that is. I'm just gonna take a quick little side there because, like I said, this is one of my favorite little weird conspiracy stat things. Auburn, right? Auburn University has 6 receivers ever that have caught 2,000 yards. 3 of them are past the year 2000. Do you know how impossible that is?
It's hard to do, Will. In this era of college football, that is hard to do.
Let me go ahead and tell you how hard that is to do, or how easy that is to do to get guys to do that. Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss had 4 of those guys.
Yep.
A.J. Brown, okay. Elijah Moore. No, sorry, not Elijah Moore. Don't count him. Laquan Treadwell. Dante Moncrief, who Hugh Freeze coached at the end of his career. Evan Ingram, who was a tight end.
Yep.
He had 4 under his specific tutelage, under his couple of years at Ole Miss that we all remember it fondly. This dude coached 4 receivers who had, and 3 at a tight end. Sorry, that had 4 pass catchers that had 2,000 receiving yards, and Auburn just can't do it. Like I said, we just watched Seth Williams be their greatest modern receiver in 3 years. So yeah, it's kind of it's almost like a version of the Spencer Rattler conversation that we had, which is well, when you go to Auburn and you're a receiver, you know that number 1 spot. And again, no disrespect to Terry Beasley. He's very clearly the number 1 spot right now, but just because of how modern offenses work and because that guy played in the 60s and 70s, right, is just you can fly. I mean, I was looking at Vandy before this. Jordan Matthews had almost 4,000 receiving yards. And we're talking about Auburn as Strack that's never crossed 3. The main guys are 2.5K. And again, I know that's it's just about consistency. I know raw numbers can be kind of annoying. Some guys will be good for a year or 2. I get it. But I'm trying to find the single season guys because exactly what you're saying. You can look at the draft picks. Usually when a guy blows up for a season, he's a draft pick. They have not had that guy. Even those guys have been kind of projects. So yeah, I'm so fascinated by how Auburn has produced at every position, fullback even. They have produced good several NFL fullbacks. And it's just oh yeah, tight end. They've had good NFL tight ends. It's how do the receivers? It's one of those Dr. Pepper commercials. It's the receivers go to the portal, they come out, they have no powers once they get to Auburn. And again, it's all this stuff kind of goes one way, which is that when you committed to Hugh Freeze, you committed to the guy who is causing Lane Kiffin to tweet out graphics about Ole Miss players in the Pro Bowl, not realizing that Hugh Freeze coached every single one of them. You know what I'm saying? You're committing to Hugh Freeze. You're committing to Auburn. I'm not saying Auburn had no part in it, but you're not committing to Brian Harsin. You're not committing to Gus Malzahn if you're a 5-star recruit. You're committing to Hugh Freeze and his ability to throw the ball. So I totally exactly see what you're saying there, which is that we kind of hibernated this Auburn season. But now that I see those receivers up here for Ole Miss, that even makes me feel better about let's get some dudes in here. Let's get some of these, let's get some of these Metcalfs. Let's get some of these freaks that he's used to having. A.J. Brown. I mean, that's the funny thing is that A.J. Brown was kind of underrated under him because people were talking about the other guys. So yeah, in my opinion, right, it was just felt like there was always a guy at Ole Miss. So yeah, and that's not changing anytime soon. So point being, I think that we're at a super duper interesting inflection point for Auburn. And I can speak on this because LSU just went through this because the Auburn offense was the only one LSU could stop all year. I grew up watching defensive football my entire life, and now we got Jaden Daniels and 2 first-round receivers. This is mind-blowing to me. It messes with you. You turn on your football game, you want to go watch with your friends, and you're like, oh, wait, we have Hugh Freeze, and now I'm here excited about the passing offense, which, to your point, we weren't even really that excited with Cam Newton because he was a dump truck, and he was able to just score in the red zone. He was good in the open field. So point being, it feels like Auburn – its brand has been consistently chaos our whole lives. It feels like they've played great defense, especially in the front 7. They've had great running backs. I'm not taking away what their MO is, but when they've won games, Nick Marshall, what was that? How could you define that, right? With Trey Lassole, Trey Benson. And so point being, I think I think they are now kind of transitioning into like actually truly having an identity for kind of the modern era, I guess, since like Tuberville left, because Gus was always doing something. He was always tinkering. He was always bringing a new OC. He was always trying to like kind of get the perfect circumstances to run whatever this offense was that I don't think he's perfectly ever run since Cam, just to be honest with you. And it wasn't about recruiting. It wasn't about the defense. You look at Derek Brown just got paid the other day. People were saying like, oh, why would you draft Derek Brown that high? Because he's that good. That's the type of guys that Auburn gets, you know? And so it's so interesting. It's kind of like LSU. It's like, well, LSU just needed a quarterback. Auburn, funny enough, had a quarterback. They just needed like weapons or a coach that understood that receivers existed. And so point being like, you kind of are starting to unlock that part of it where it's like, wait, we don't need to win games like, I guess, 14-10 back in the day, or like now, I guess that would be like, 28-21, right? It's like, wait, if we get in a shootout, now it's hard to see with Peyton Thorne, I understand that, but you gotta, once you look at these lists and you know what Hugh Freeze does, what he did at Liberty with your boy, the fact that he's been able to produce this at every stop is just like, let's just let this play out. I think it's going to be all right. And like to your point, this might be the guy, but it's not worth getting. It's like different. It's as an Auburn fan, you saw what you saw last year, so you kind of are starting to get antsy. So you want to go, okay, well, like, what's the next thing? Let's turn the page. But exactly, that's why I love how you're bringing this together, which is that probably not a freshman receiver is probably not the next page. Probably a sophomore receiver. Probably you're committing to another year of like mid-plus offense. But that following year, watch out.
There's a desire to find a savior in some sort of way. When you watch offense that bad, you think to yourself, oh, just give me hope. Just give me some sort of hope. Cam Coleman could be the solution. He could be that hope. It's just going to be a little bit more touch and go than we probably realize, I think, early on. Because, like, as much as I want to say better days will be ahead for this passing offense, even if Peyton Thorne only does the bare minimum to keep his job, even if he just does that and can avoid in-game benchings and stuff like that have become far too regular throughout his career, there is still going to be, I think, a hope that you're going to have more of these positive moments and not games where you look up and you're like, oh my God, our wide receivers had a combined 4 catches for 38 yards in this game. Yep. There's that can't exist. It's like, if you're going to,
one of them's Coy Moore,
right? I mean, you're just like looking around going, where are our options? Our move the chains type guys.
Yep.
Are guys that are going to make a defense go, oh, we actually need to game plan to slow down that guy. He's at the top of our scouting report. You need to be able to bring those guys in. Hugh Freeze, to his credit, with the way that they recruited the receiver position at the high school level, he is banking on those guys being 3-year guys. 3-year guys who can come in and they'd figure some things out in year 1. And then by year 2, it's okay. Now you're ready to kind of lead this offense. But let's remember, you can flash potential and still be kind of frustrating as a freshman receiver. I mean, you just can't. Even George Pickens had his moments. George Pickens.
That guy's had his moments for his whole career. Yeah. That's a guy who he has a little bit of Keyshawn Booty in him as well. It's a guy we haven't specifically talked about yet, but I think that guy kind of fit the mold, right? Where it's like, you're kind of going, you're a 5-star, you're doing okay. And then like, holy hell, what was that? Like the Ole Miss game he had, I think it was like 308 receiving yards. That's usually how these guys come on as freshmen, where they have like a statement game, kind of like back third of the year, and then they build on that. And so, yeah, I mean, but that has been truly George Pickett's whole career, because we'll have a game like that, like he had in the NFL the other day, and it was like, oh, this guy's the best receiver we've ever seen. And it's just a couple of him fighting people.
Yeah, Pickens had his true freshman year. His massive breakout game was the Sugar Bowl against Baylor. He had 12 catches for 175 yards in that game. And that was his first career 100-yard game. And like, to that point, you recall the Georgia fight, the Georgia Tech fight that he had.
I was going to say, you got to specify which fight you're talking about with this character.
The squirted water bottle at Jared Garantano was 2020, I believe.
I'll never hate that. That was hilarious. I love that.
Great moment. Unbelievable camera work from CBS to be able to get that shot. I mean, just chef's kiss to be able to stay with the play in that spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you see somebody like that, and Keyshawn Booty had his moments, his true freshman year, where you're like, dude, you can't drop the ball before the goal line against Alabama. Okay. This is not the way this is going to work if you're actually going to pull off an upset of this magnitude, which we know that LSU team had no chance of doing. But even in a prolific season like that, how does a guy like Kayshon Boutte emerge as a true freshman? Well, it kind of helped that guys opted out at the end of the year, and all of a sudden, Terrace Marshall wasn't playing at the end of the year, and the Eric Gilbert thing kind of came and went, and it was like, boom, you need a guy that's just going to eat targets, and Kayshon Boutte was absolutely ready to do that. And maybe Cam Coleman is going to have a first year like that, or we have some of these moments where we're like, that is, you can't teach that. That is going to be so fun to watch. And then maybe his plays are louder than what the numbers actually suggest. And we look up, we're like, okay, yeah, he didn't set the world on fire as a true freshman, but there's still enough to make you feel like he can be a key piece of getting this Auburn offensive identity to the place that it needs to get to, which year one, that wasn't it. At least I hope it wasn't it, because it was basura. I hope Cam Coleman is a stud. I hope that there are more days like what he had on Saturday in his future, and that will make Auburn so much better to watch.
I will say this too, as you talk about George Pickens, this guy is like what my buddy, it was from Puerto Rico, used to say, the eternal prospect. This guy had 300-yard receiving games in his college career, all of which came in December or January.
Yep. Always.
It was like, but wait, buy in right now. Hold on, I got you for next year. Like, he had like one 98-yard game against State that was like kind of middle of the year, whatever, not a 100-yard game. Not State, South Carolina, one of the Maroon teams. And lost South Carolina, so like how great can that be? But like that's so funny when you look at the statistical profile of these young receivers, where it's like there are a lot of guys where it's like, oh, you start that ramp up like Boutte, and you just continue to be pretty good, right? Like Boutte just kind of got into his own way. He was a good receiver.
Got hurt too his sophomore year, which derailed things. Yeah.
Well, he also bet 500 G's on college football. Anyway,
allegedly, we're still waiting for the investigation to unfold. I'm not sold that the name that he used.
Kayshon Boutte won.
Yeah, Kayshon Boutte 007. That couldn't have been him.
I would think it could be anybody. There are lots of Kayshon Boutte's walking around, yeah, right? Lots of Kayshons, lots of Boutte's. Anyway, so point being, like outside of like those kind of like specific situations, like I think that most of the time you start to see, you know what I'm saying? You start to see these guys as the freshmen. So that's specifically what I would say, like to look for is like, hey, don't like stress the stats, don't stress that, like stress the approach, right? And receiver is a position where your star guys are usually pretty locked in, you know what I'm saying? But you have opportunities because you can run 3 and 4 receiver sets. You can get young guys involved. So when you start to see guys like the way that Luther Burden was, like when he first started playing, it was like, yeah, this guy's going to be a problem. They just got to figure out how to throw him the ball. It's pretty simple. Like that was one of those few, and like we joke about this sometimes, one of those few where I'm like, I feel like me and Connor could probably get this guy open. He's open all the time, and they're just not throwing him the ball. So, like, when you start to see that out of a young guy where it's like, yeah, he doesn't quite have the stats, but you watch his routes, you look at his approach, you look at how he's matching up in different situations and his awareness. Like, that's what you look for as a coach, because it's not, again, your point about, like, okay, you're 6'3". It's like, well, that's always going to be there, but you have to earn your reps as a receiver, because that experience of how to play very specific situations in split-second decisions is how great receivers, like Jerry Rice is like 6 feet tall. He was just good at that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the thing to look at is not is your guy getting catches, is he getting touchdowns or yards, especially in like random garbage time games or whatever. It's like, okay, is this guy getting better? Is Hugh Freeze trusting him? Is his quarterback, whomever that may be, trusting him? I know it's going to be Peyton, but yeah, or Peyton, yeah.
I think Burden is an interesting guy to bring up in this conversation because you talk about guys that had frustrating moments year one, and then year two they take off. Obviously, I think the move to the slot definitely helped him out, where they had a lot of moments his true freshman year where he was either force-fed targets lining up out wide and he wasn't ready to win those battles, or it would be like things where he didn't know how to find the soft spot in the zone, and he wasn't in a spot where like that wasn't really where he was making catches, where it was like, hey, you got to stop. You got to be able to catch this in between dime defense or something like that. And you need to be able to make this catch with your hands and understand, where your defenders are on each side, and do that and process that all like within one motion. Where like, I think there were so many moments from him as a sophomore that made us think like, how did they ever struggle getting this guy the football? It should be easy. You get that guy in space, you get him on some of these mismatches, and it's pitch and catch. He's gone. But at the same time, it does go to show you, especially with these guys who aren't necessarily 6'3". Now, Coleman's 6'3". he's probably going to be better suited to be able to line up and win some of those battles on the outside than Luka Burden was. But at the same time, like, there's a figuring out process too, even with the coaching staff. What do you do well? What have we seen you do well? What can you actually consistently do well that we can fall back on and make a piece of our offense? Hugh Freeze is very motivated to make Cam Coleman a big piece of this offense, big piece of this offense, because there are so few guys on that entire roster that can make the plays that he made in a spring game as a high school senior. So there are probably going to be a lot of moments where he's tinkering a little bit too. I hope we see him lined up in the slot. I hope we see some of these things that, hey, you're just getting that guy a bubble screen and seeing what he can do in space. If it's one of those quiet games where you're just like, we need to get him more involved. But, Burden is a good example of a guy that, I think needed to be put in some of those right spots, and he figured things out as a sophomore, but it's just not always automatic, even with a 5-star uberly talented dude.
Oh my gosh, Burden only had 375 receiving yards as a freshman. Yeah, and then immediately jumped. And I think like that's part of it too. Obviously, like the joke here is we're kind of like blaming, or how about this? Let's be positive. We are giving credit to Drink for understanding that he needed to give up play calling duties into year 2. And it was a 1,000-yard almost jump in Burden's production. But part of that too is getting that maturity. So I love that Luther Burden example, which is, okay, dude, yeah, you're used to matching up, bubble screens, linebackers, third receiver, but now you need to run the hell out of this route, knowing that you are pretty much a decoy, and we're about to hit that boy Weiss for a 50-yard gain, and you need to get these defenders believing that you are like running like a man possessed on every single play, because Burden was effective as a receiver, but he was just as effective as a decoy because he would run the hell out of every route and make it seem like if you don't put 3 guys on this guy, he's going to run for a touchdown. And then the whole defense would start shifting, and then boom, that's where Mizzou was at its best, funny enough, because then they would start getting scared and they wouldn't know what to do, and then boom, Burden over the top. So that's the thing, is there are so many, we grew up playing Madden or NCAA, and we think like all these guys are interchangeable, but the little tiny details that go into playing receiver, that's what's so exciting. The guy like Coleman's like, okay, you know that this guy has this ability because you've seen it. How is he going to translate that into being a leader from the receiver position? How is he going to translate that if he can, right? You never know. But what does this evolution look like? Because you got him for at least, a couple of years here, and you get to see this guy grow up.
In theory, you got him for at least a couple of years. You never know. You never know with the 5-star guys, man. You just never know.
Very true. And the king example of that is the guy's not that big a recruit, but Brian Thomas Jr. got better every year, got so much better every year, to the point where you watched him play, you're like, has this guy ever played receiver before? When you saw the physical tools, but he was able to work on those other little things, working with guys like Neighbors, working with guys like Hankton. So yeah, I think that it's fascinating to see what Hugh Freeze is building, because he's still holding his cards. Yeah.
And I'm excited for Auburn fans. Like I don't want this to be like, hey, I'm just crapping on the kid. Like I'm absolutely not. Hope the sky is the limit for Cam Coleman in an Auburn uniform, because it would be more exciting to be able to watch this year. All right. Speaking of really, really good young pass catchers,
let's get into. Doesn't develop anymore because he's good enough to whoop LSU.
Yeah, there we go. Talked a little bit about that LSU game with Luke Hasz. Great conversation. Love being able to have the All Bang the Drum team member on the show. Not often I bang the drum for a guy with 4 years of college experience. Just talked about how difficult it is for these guys and why I don't try and get too hyped up over seeing them as a true freshman in the spring game. But Luke Hasz has already done that, and certainly did it against LSU. But we know he is a star in the making, it looks like. So great to talk with him about his story, kind of his atypical path in football, what his role is going to be in this Robert Patrick Petrino-led Arkansas offense. What a beautiful sentence that is to be able to say. Great perspective from him. So here's Luke. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Arkansas tight end and All Bang the Drum team member, Luke Hasz. Luke, let's start right there. Arkansas fans know this. The rest of the world needs to know this, because I've heard people kind of going back and forth. Even the great Chris Fowler during that LSU game last year. Pronounce your last name for us.
Hasz. Basically just take away the Z.
Okay, that's
I get it, but I mean, it's just like, usually just take away the Z. I guess that's the best way to put it.
That's what I've been telling myself. And I feel like if you had been able to play a full season, there would have been total clarity on that, because your name would have been announced a million more times, scoring touchdowns, making big plays. But obviously the way that things played out last year, you get off to that incredible start, and then you suffer a season-ending clavicle injury, which sounds like absolute hell. How big of a gut punch is that to go from getting off to that start, feeling like I can play at this level, to then having your entire season wiped out?
I mean, it was really I kind of took it a different way, but I mean, it obviously was not good not being able to be out there with my teammates and just playing and having fun with them. But no, I mean, I kind of took it a different way. I feel like it allowed me to mature more and just allowed me to learn more from Coach Turner, and then also further develop my relationship with the Lord and with my girlfriend and my parents and just my teammates. So I feel like a lot of people may seem like it's a big deal. I mean, stuff like that happens. So I mean, I was just thankful for a different perspective that allowed me to just grow and mature for this year. So I feel like it'll be even better.
The positive is that, you get that perspective. You also still got reps, which are important. Reps by any way that you can get them early in your career means a lot. You played 232 snaps. That's a ton for a true freshman tight end in the SEC. And the fact that you only played essentially 4+ games, that just speaks to how valuable you were early on. Was it just a massive confidence boost for you, knowing that, hey, not only am I getting out there, but I'm making plays too, but just the confidence in seeing that you can play at a high level in the SEC? How much did that do just for your mindset day to day?
I mean, I'd say it helped with the SEC, but also just my teammates, just the tight end room trusting me to go out there and make plays. And then just our quarterback last year, KJ, him trusting me on third downs and critical situations just for me to go make plays. I feel like that was my biggest confidence, just having that trust with my teammates around me, knowing that when I'm out there, I'm going to do my best and do everything I can to help the team win.
You had moments where I don't often say this, but I'm like, how is he getting open? Just our defense is forgetting about him. Did you feel that at all? Because I'm sure by the time you were done in high school, and I do want to talk to you about that because you had a pretty atypical high school career, but did you have moments last year where you felt like, oh my God, the defense just forgot about me, and I'm running in more open space than I've had in a long time?
Yes, I mean, I think that goes just with the scheme that we had. I mean, this scheme this year is going to be even better, but last year it was just a really good scheme for the tight ends, and I think just being able to practice against these guys, our defense every day, just definitely helped me prepare for the games that I got to play in, which I was thankful for. And I feel like just those moments when I knew I was going to be open, I knew I had to make those plays, and just for my teammates to count on me.
Do you like playing inline, or do you think you get more mismatches lined up in the slot?
Really, I like playing both. This year, I mean, I'm kind of like going inline more. I feel like my run blocking's gotten better, but I mean, just with being split out, it is nice being able to go against linebackers and safeties. But no, I really think either or works. I like both of them.
I loved what Bobby Petrino did at A&M last year, and their use of the tight end, the two tight end sets that they were able to run. What's this new offense been like, and how do you see yourself being used in it compared to Dan Enos's offense last year?
I mean, it's been exciting. He's definitely giving us freedom as a tight end room to go play all over the field, and just he's allowing us to play in the position where we're going to be at our best. And his offense just has a bunch of diversity and just discipline, and just basically allowing us to pick and choose where we want to go. And he creates mismatches for us all the time. And then just with the run blocking stuff, it's making a lot of sense. And it's great having a nice offensive line and a quarterback like Talon. He's communicating really well and making practice go good so far.
Tell me about I always think it's interesting, the freedom that you have at the top of a route to be like, hey, I see the zone coverage. They're playing me this way. This is how I've got to be able to break off the route and do stuff like that. What is that like in this scheme, and how comfortable do you feel with that freedom?
I mean, it's exciting, especially when you know it's on a third down or like a first down. You know that just pre-snap you can see what the defense is doing, and then during the route you can tell just by the way the defense is moving if you're going to have a big play. I mean, you're always going to have a big play with these option routes that he's allowing us to run. So, I mean, it's definitely exciting. And then really just at the top having the freedom to pick and choose where we want to go, but also having that connection in practice, just building it with the quarterback and getting ready for the game, knowing that we're gonna break a certain way when the defense is in a certain coverage.
What's Coach Petrino like at this stage of his career, between the lines at least? Is he players coach? Is he more disciplinarian? Like if you run the wrong route in practice, are you getting an earful from him? Like what's his overall demeanor like right now?
I'd say he's a little bit of both. He's like, it's a perfect mixture. I mean, just for me, example, in the tight end room, I mean, we know we're going to go out there and do our best just to make sure that he doesn't have to get on tests, but also just being okay with making mistakes because it's practice and early on. But no, I mean, he's been really good just with like coaching us at a level that just makes us want to be better each and every day. So we know that when we're getting our depth with our routes, that we're making sure we're getting those right depths and breaking in the right way on our option routes and just everything like that.
What was your first impression of meeting him? Because obviously, you probably hear a bunch of things. You didn't grow up in the state of Arkansas, but obviously the history of him in his program, and then meeting him, did it kind of like confirm what you had maybe heard about him? Was he different? What was just your overall impression of him like?
I'd say it was awesome. Just from where I came from high school, just to piggyback, like we had a really like disciplined football team in high school, but like our first team meeting that we had with him, his first words were, "Have your rear in your chair and your backs against your chair." So I feel like that just really brought a lot of attention to just his details and discipline that just is going to carry over to the season and help us win football games. And then just how much he really wanted to come back here. I mean, I didn't really know much about Arkansas football back in the day, but I knew that they were very successful. And then him just really wanting to come back here, what he said in our team meetings was just really special.
There's no way he said rear, but that's okay. We can edit that one. That's fine. We've had Coach Pittman on the show several times. I always love to think about what a recruitment visit would be like with him when he shows up, in your high school or at your house or something like that. What was that experience like for you?
With Coach Pittman?
Yeah.
It was awesome. I mean, I feel like just throughout the whole recruiting process, Coach Pittman was super genuine and really the same as he is now here. Like, I don't really think anything changes. So I think that's really special because you don't really get that with many other universities. So, I mean, just with he's just himself. So, I mean, he's constantly smiling, but also like on the football field, like you can tell that he really wants us to be the best we can be and to reach our full potential. So, I mean, he's over there. You see him with the offensive line all the time, but he's also with he's with the tight ends every once in a while too, just helping us with our run blocking stuff. And just overall, you could tell he genuinely cares about you.
I watched your interview on the Ride and Around show, and you said that during COVID, you gained 25 pounds your sophomore year of high school because you didn't have those AAU basketball tournaments to be able to play in. And your brother Dylan, who's with you on the team, or was with you on the team now and was on the football team, at Bixby at the time, he's like, hey, just come play football. You should at this point. You got the frame to be able to do it. I know you were insane that first year you played. It's pretty incredible to think that you averaged like 22 yards a catch or something like that. But do you have any tough moments that stood out from early on of like, oh man, like I don't even know how to put on pads. Like, did you not understand like a route concept? Was there like a humbling welcome to football type moment you had that sophomore year?
I'd say during COVID, I wasn't on the team yet, but we all went and got together and threw at this like old football field, and they started saying the names of just simple routes that, I mean, I know now obviously, but back then I had no idea what was going on. But no, I feel like it all just kind of went naturally too. I mean, I got to play a little bit when I was like in kindergarten through second grade, but it wasn't.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count.
But no, I mean, it all really translated well too. I'd say with basketball, I'd say for anyone who's wanting to play football, I think basketball is great to play with it too, just because I feel like it helps so much with the football stuff.
Yeah, you're going like the Antonio Gates route. Essentially, is it's kind of similar. Like there just seems to be that crossover that's very much there. It's crazy that you had so many offers after playing just one season of high school football, but you were that good. How wild was that process when you start seeing all these offers come in? You're like, crap, man, like I just picked up this sport like a few months ago.
I'd say it was definitely wild at first, but I mean, it just kind of goes to show, I mean, how God works and how my brother, me having a twin brother, and just with COVID happening, allowing us to just spend time with each other and then him just really pouring to me what he thinks I should do. And then it was just a huge blessing for me to receive all those offers to go places. But I'm definitely glad I came here.
You probably had some matchups in high school where you see a linebacker in man coverage and you're just thinking to yourself, like, man, I am about to feast off of this. Like, if I were you, I would have just been looking at the opposing coach if he lines up a linebacker in man coverage, and I would just be like, really? Like, you think this is going to work? Did you ever just have those moments where you just knew beforehand, I'm about to have a big play? This is 60 yards and a score or something like that. By the end of your career, you're just like, this is just an unstoppable matchup for me.
I would say so. That was mostly just because, I mean, our offense in high school, I mean, even here too, but just our offense in high school and just all the players we had on our team, we were all really close together, and we're just really tough. So, I mean, whenever, like, we did a bunch of off-season work and just being able to work with the quarterback and our offense was really unique in high school. So, I mean, it created, like, those mismatchups. So, I mean, it was just really good during high school to be able to experience that.
What was the unique part about it? Like pre-snap motion? Were you guys doing a little bit more, splitting tight ends out wide? Like what kind of set it apart?
Well, yeah, I mean, he has a whole playbook on Twitter or something. But just we had so many different motions. We'd pull like 4 guys. I really started playing wide receiver when in high school. So I mean, we got to do that. I got to do that most of my whole high school career, and then. No, I mean, it was just really good. We really got to do everything we wanted at the high school.
You committed to Oklahoma before your junior season. I'm sure many people that grow up in that state think, all right, that's kind of the dream to be able to do that. Then Lincoln Riley leaves for USC. You decommit a week later. What was that decision, that whole process like for you when that stuff went down?
Well, I mean, it was definitely disappointing that Lincoln left, but really – looking back on it, I feel like I definitely probably made that decision too early. And just to see Arkansas still recruit me while I was committed there and just continue to show love while my brother was getting recruited here. I mean, that was a big deal, especially them actually genuinely wanting to recruit my brother. That was a really big deal for me to choose coming here. But no, I'm really glad that – I mean, I'm thankful that Oklahoma gave me the chance, but I'm super excited that I came here.
Is it, there's a lot of talk about the high school recruiting calendar, all that stuff. Like, based on your experience, and you go from being this guy that's all of a sudden just got a ton of offers on the table, and you're everywhere. Like, is there an ideal time to commit? I know everybody's different, but is it after your junior season that you should probably have that kind of figured out? Like, when's that sweet spot?
I mean, I'd say it really just depends on your situation. I think for me, I definitely could have waited a little bit longer, but I mean, looking back on it, just the genuine love that Arkansas showed and just how close it is to home and just really the people that I've met here. I mean, it's been a no-brainer why I came here. And so I feel like for me, I mean, I definitely could have committed to Arkansas. I mean, it's just really as soon as I got the offer, but it really just depends on the person.
You stuck with Arkansas even though, the scheme has changed. This is the third offensive scheme in as many years. How much do you feel like scheme matters for what you do best on a football field?
I mean, I'd say it really does matter a lot. But, I mean, just with the relationship that I've had with Coach Pittman and just really trusting him and who he's going to bring in. I mean, he brought in Coach Petrino, and that's huge. But I have trust in Coach Pittman with every decision that he's going to make. So I feel like that is just a really big deal of why I just love it here. And just the people and the teammates and having my brother here, it's a really big deal.
Yeah, talk about that, because it's one thing to go to school and go out of state or something like that and feel like, all right, I get along well with my teammates and stuff like that. But having your brother kind of at every stage to be there with you to share this experience, like, how much more are you able to just enjoy being in college knowing that, you got somebody that's going to be at your side the entire time?
I mean, it's definitely a huge blessing. And just being able to have him as a roommate and just like when my parents come up, it's easy for them just to be able to come see both of us at the same time. and really just being able to compete with him through high school and now, I mean, it's definitely awesome. And I mean, we have so many things in common, so many things different. It's just really nice being able to be with him.
One day you're probably going to have to answer to an NFL scout like, hey, are you guys like a package deal? Like, do you guys want to go to the same place and do all that stuff? Like, do you find yourself being like, yeah, we're a little bit of a package deal. Like, we kind of go around, we do like similar things. We hang out in the same social circles and all that stuff.
I would say, I mean, definitely coming out of high school, it was a big deal that my brother had a scholarship here, and that was definitely a big deal of why I wanted to come here. I mean, there's more reasons than that, but that was a really big deal. But I mean, we have our different views on life and like what we like to do. But I mean, I always count him as a package deal. I mean, he's awesome. He's done so much for me, and I've got to do so much for him. So it's been really good.
What's your game like in basketball? Like, what's your like when you get going and you're at your best? What exactly, like, are you stretching the floor with threes? Are you posting up, driving to the basket? Like, what exactly does your game look like with hoops?
Well, now probably not the same, but back when I used to play, I like to shoot a lot, and then my spin move was my favorite move. But that was back in the day. I don't think I can do that now.
So, like, be honest, like last time you really like were able to get after it and really like actually play a game of pickup or something like that. Did you feel like, hey, I could have probably done this at the college level?
I mean, I think basketball is really challenging, and I mean, you got to stick with it. And I really quit playing after my sophomore year when I started playing football. But no, I mean, I feel like there was definitely a chance, but I think I had a different sport, like a different passion for me to go with. But no, basketball takes a lot of hard work. So, I mean, taking a year off, 2 years especially, I mean, it'd be challenging to keep playing after that.
Is it hard to quit that? Because that was your first love, was it not? I mean, being able to like step away from basketball and be like, hey, I kind of got to go all in with this football thing.
I mean, it definitely was hard. I mean, I remember my sophomore year when I started playing football, I was still going to basketball practices, like before school and still shooting and that stuff. But no, I mean, really I just love like the team atmosphere and truly like having to play like all 11 have to do the right thing. I mean, I feel like that was a big thing. And then just like the physical part and violence of football, I mean, I feel like that's a big deal. And I mean, I just have so much fun playing this game.
What's your favorite thing to do on a football field? Is it truck a dude in the open field, highlight real grab, make someone miss in space? Like, when you close your eyes and think about that ideal football play, what is it?
I'd definitely say probably on a big third down on an away game, making a completion, just like a completion for a first down. I feel like that's a big deal.
So basically the LSU game is what you're saying. Like that entire game, it felt like
that game was fun, but
yeah. The which I always think it's interesting. We fall in love with comps with tight ends. Like what NFL tight end do you look at and see most similarities with right now? It doesn't have to be, or it can be even if it's a college tight end or something like that. But a guy that you look at and you're like, yeah, my game I feel like is pretty similar to them.
Recently this offseason, I've been watching a lot of DJ Williams film just because he was here in Coach Petrino's offense. So he's been really fun to watch. And I like watching Brock Bowers. He's definitely really good to watch. Trying to think who else I've been watching. We watch a lot of Hill for run blocking. So, I mean, I feel like those three guys, I mean, there's so many good ones out there, but I feel like those are three people just to watch and take little parts from each of them and then just be unique.
Kittle always talks about like the run blocking thing. I mean, his high school commitment to Iowa, and he's like, there's pictures out there where he's just the scrawniest dude ever. And run blocking was just something that he fell in love with. And he was like, I have a passion for this. Is it that easy to all of a sudden be like, I really like doing this and I'm going to devote this much time and energy to it? Or is he just a lot more technical than he gets credit for?
I mean, I think it definitely goes both ways. But I'd say with run blocking too, I mean, you just have to really love it, especially if you're a little bit undersized. But no, you just really, like for me this past year, I mean, just trusting in Coach Turner's footwork and everything that he's taught me the past almost 2 years that I've been here, year and a half. It's definitely made run blocking a lot more enjoyable and just allowing me to go out there and be successful.
Tell me about your new quarterback, Taylor Green. I know you spoke highly of his leadership skills and what he's done so far. For SEC fans who maybe didn't watch him at Boise State, or Arkansas fans who don't really have a whole lot of familiarity with him just yet, what should people know about him?
Just that he's really electric, and he'll make plays. He makes plays with his feet. He can throw the ball extremely well. But, I mean, like I said before, I mean, he's a really good leader, and just like his ability to be liked by everyone and just to communicate very well, not only on the football field, but like in the locker room. It's definitely a big deal for the team and the offense in general. But, I mean, he's going to make some really big plays with his feet and with his arm.
You guys in those 45-minute, hour-long throwing sessions like after practice and stuff right now, is that pretty big for you?
Yes, and I'd say as soon as when we got here, like his first day here, we had all the guys up, and we really worked hard this offseason just like during the day. Well, we were just really lifting, getting up here and building chemistry and just working a lot, like learning the passing game. So, I mean, it's been cool to see him step up and get us all out there and working hard.
I want to get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Let's go for it.
All right. What is your go-to artist or band right now?
I like Zach Williams right now, probably.
Zach Williams. I don't know Zach Williams. What kind of music?
It's like a Christian artist.
Okay.
He's really good. Or probably Zach Bryan, because I'm going to concert and I got to learn some of his stuff before I go.
Zach Bryan's a good binge listen to. You can go through an hour of his set and even just the acoustic stuff, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, you're a twin. Have you ever tried to trick someone by saying that you were your brother?
No, I think the only person – I mean, people get confused with us sometimes. I mean, we look nothing alike. But, I mean, my grandma gets confused sometimes, I guess.
Because you guys have very different hair, too. That's a big part.
Yes.
Yeah.
My hair is not brushed right now. I just got done practice.
Okay, last show that you binge watched was what?
The Night Agent on Netflix.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Are you okay with the NFL banning hip drop tackles, or do you think that's unrealistic?
I think it's unrealistic. Just because, I mean, at practice we have stuff like that happens all the time. So, I mean, you can't really expect the defense to really focus on that when they're going out there playing full speed.
It's interesting how many offensive guys have said exactly that. Like, well, if the guy gets beat, how are they going to prevent that? That's just the nature of the beast.
Yes.
Okay, last one for you. Say something nice about Oklahoma now that they're in the SEC. Stop.
Let's see. I mean, I got a lot of buddies up there. I mean, I guess that's a plus. I don't really know. I don't really got much to say.
That's fine. Hey, there's nothing wrong with Mark Andrews, good tight end, went to Oklahoma.
Yeah, he was a really good tight end. I'm trying to think who else. They've had some really good tight ends that came from there, but no. I mean, Arkansas had some good ones too.
That's right. That's a good answer. Nothing wrong with that. Luke, this has been great, man. Really appreciate the time. Best of luck with everything this year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, our new idea, your new idea. Let's give credit where credit is due. This is your new idea. Pitch me. We are getting you, the listener, involved. This will be on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all SDS social channels. This is going to be, you described this, you actually pitched me on this idea, ironically enough. This is Shark Tank meets SEC fandom, to where we're going to have specific elements of your team, whether that's your mascot, your stadium, fan experience, head coach, quarterback, whatever. We are going to ask you to pitch us, myself, Will, on why that thing is the best in the SEC. So, hey, you're an Ole Miss fan. We're talking about quarterbacks. Pitch me why Jackson Dart is the best quarterback in the SEC. We want to hear your arguments. We will pick. I think this is how we should do it. We're kind of making this up on the fly a little bit, where we pick the best responses that correlate with the specific topic that we're talking about for that week, and we'll do this on our Friday pods that drop. We will read them on here, and then I think we need to declare a winner at the end of each episode. Is that maybe it's like our official podcast stance moving forward. We're like, hey.
Yeah, now, do we individually pick winners, or do we have to come together?
Good question. I think we can have a healthy debate about what our winner is. Maybe we need to pitch each other. Maybe that's how this ends. Maybe if there isn't a consensus, I think we're usually on the same page with a lot of this stuff. I'm a beta. I'm a pretty agreeable guy, so you can talk me into anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, if someone gives us the best pitch on why Jordan Hare, it's been an Auburn heavy pod today. If someone gives us the best pitch on why Jordan Hare is the best SEC fan experience, then I think we adopt that take as our own. It's like our official podcast stance, and we go to bat for it. Doesn't not quite like all bang the drum team. This is definitely separate from that.
This would be legendary for bar arguments too, because it's like, if I think, like, let's say, hey, I think Tiger Stadium is the best stadium or whatever, right? Or if I think like Mike the Tiger is the best mascot, and someone's like, well, actually the story of like Reveille is like da da da, and like someone's talking about it, like, well, you guys got to hear the story about Reveille. So that's the cool thing, is it's like, it's a good answer. It's a valid take, you know?
So let's put our biases on the table. I think we need to do that. If we are going to be truly objective in this process, we need the listeners to know that we are not going to come in with our preconceived biases. So if we do, for example, a stadium episode, I don't think it's fair for you to default to Death Valley as the best. Okay. I think we got to pick a different one. Like same with mascots. How about that? I can't just default to Uga. That's not fair. Like what's the point of doing a pitch if I'm just going to say, nope, this isn't good. This isn't good. So we will put our biases on the table. We will say what it is beforehand, and we will say we will not pick this because, again, I think it's got to be more of a consensus thing. We want to listen to the pitch. We want to be able to kind of talk it over amongst ourselves here on these airwaves, and then make that determination from there. And yeah, like you said, it's a good bar argument to be able to say, hey, podcasts that I listen to, they kind of listen to all these arguments, and actually, you think the Grove is the best tailgating? It's actually not. It's actually Mississippi State. No, nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. But still,
there's a 1-star review.
Please don't give us a 1-star review based on that. I love the Grove. The Grove is unbelievable. Had a blast there. So that's the type of stuff that we want to be able to get. We've been talking for a while about what's a good idea to get some of this listener involvement with, obviously, topics that you guys are all very, very passionate about, and I think this would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm waiting on the bit that you do where we do the mascots and you check Uga at the door and then pick Bully at the end. There's a second bulldog. Anyway, so yeah, no, I actually love that. It's like, hey, whatever we love, we got to declare it, kind of like customs. If you're like, I can't talk about this, like the playoff committee should. That's what we should do. I love that.
Yeah, the bias is on the table. We need to do more of that in our society. Like, the amount of arguments that you can get in with somebody on social media who like has a very clear bias against a certain thing. You're like, once you actually just can put that together, you're like, oh yeah, that person feels that way because they absolutely hate this one thing. Or they have the team record in their Twitter handle. They probably don't feel too kindly about this team. Like all that stuff. So we will do the best we can to be able to give totally objective thoughts, listening to what you all say when you pitch us. So that's a good shameless plug to follow us on all forms of social media to be able to do that if you want to participate in this. Will's already got a graphic that's ready to roll. It's magnificent. I love it. So you're going to see it all over the place. And we will start doing that. That'll be on Fridays. We will be doing that moving forward with the jersey contest in the rear view mirror. Well, do we want to close with some lad, or if I had to guess, I think you have a last of the week. You have a last of the week, don't you?
Yes, mine's a little bit deeper, so I'll let you go first.
Okay, mine is you could probably make the case that mine is deep into the tangled web that has become the college basketball coaching carousel. My lad of the week is Andy Enfield. Enfield. Sure. I probably should have learned his name before making him my lad of the week.
Oh, wait. As you say that, I'll make myself look stupid. I just called Trey Benson earlier. My bad. So now we're on the same page.
Yeah, I didn't know who you were talking about when you said that. Not going to lie.
Well, to be fair, Trey Mason's dad was in De La Soul, so I call him Trey La Soul. Anyway.
Trey La Soul is a good nickname. That's a really good nickname.
What were you saying?
Yeah. First of all, Auburn running backs, they've had more than enough to be able to forget one or two here or there. If I want to call him Ben Date instead of Ben Tate, it's going to happen. We make mistakes. Fair. Okay, Andy Enfield, the new SMU basketball coach, the former USC basketball coach, the former Dunk City coach at Florida Gulf Coast. Fun fact, my cousin does flooring work for Florida Gulf Coast every summer. It's like every Saturday in the summer. He is at FGCU and was there during the Dunk City time. Fun times. The Andy Enfield domino effect in college basketball is insane. It's wild. He left USC after 11 years and left for SMU. And he admitted in his press conference, hey, it's a little bit of like, you need some context, probably going to get fired at USC, you're trying to control your next move, that type of move. But he said in his press conference at SMU that if not for SMU joining the ACC, yes, college football fans, wrap your head around that. SMU and the ACC, get ready for that world. He basically would not have been the new coach at SMU. That's what he said. Yes, them joining the ACC, huge part. Big reason why he was able to take that job. It probably actually, now that I'm thinking of it, this whole coaching carousel that has just gone at warp speed over the course of the last week plus probably all started with SMU deciding to fire a 20-win coach in year 2 at SMU.
Huh.
Yeah, Rob Lanier. Didn't really understand that one. I'm not into the college basketball weeds as many are, but Enfield takes the job.
They're crazy. They haven't had many opportunities to show it, but they're crazy. They had Larry Brown. Let's not forget.
Gosh, they did, Will.
They hired Larry Brown. Like the other day, 10 years ago, but yeah.
Can I name a single SMU basketball player ever?
Semi Ojeleye.
Is that really one?
I think that's who he coached, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take your word for it. I can't push back on that. That's still the fact that we have one maybe right now. It's the only SMU basketball player we can name.
Yes, he did play at SMU, yes.
There you go. Okay. All right. Research was on that one. But yeah, we know what happens. Enfield ends up taking this job. Musselman leaves for USC. Calipari leaves for Arkansas. Who knows who leaves for Kentucky? As of this recording, we're recording this before the national championship, by the way, all that stuff. But this could be college basketball's version of the Willie Gay, Garrett Schrader fight that just sent everything into motion. And I hope that when that documentary is made, that I get to be a talking head and I get to talk about Joe Moorhead and how he shouldn't have been fired. I hope I get to be part of that one day when I don't think it's going to be a 30-30. That would be a good – they used to do 30-30 shorts that were 20-minute docs that were awesome, that I would love to be able to do something like that one day, but that's a future me deal. We have not even gotten to nearly the end of this because the Kentucky opening is going to that's going to set everything in motion, and all this stuff that's going to come of that, and all the different portal moves and everything it's hard to wrap your head around, all because coach from USC left for SMU. So a worthy lad of the week, I think. I hope.
Yes. I love that. I mean, that's wow. First off, Dunk City was 11 years ago.
Isn't that sad? Dunk City YouTube clips are great. You should watch them at least once a year. Just an innocent time, a truly innocent time. Somewhere a Florida fan listening to this said, "Well, who beat Dunk City? Who was the one that stopped?" I know, but we were all having fun watching Dunk City. Okay,
congrats! You beat Florida Gulf Coast University. Hang the banner.
It was electric. It truly was. But even those YouTube clips are not in the best quality for what you would think at the time. But somebody needs to go just YouTube that right now, and that's 5 minutes of your day well spent. You're welcome.
Yeah, I love this pick. You're right. I mean, the question is, where does Will Wade end up?
Will Wade ends up
Because Will with legal bribes, buddy, he could be.
I know. We're waiting
Calipari himself.
Him getting blasted in the tournament by Gonzaga was probably a reminder that, like, yeah, you know, really good coach, did awesome things year one, but like, let's maybe pump the brakes on that. I think if he beats Gonzaga in that opener, he's probably thought of a little bit more right now as like an more obvious candidate. But I mean, you're right. It's going to happen. Like you don't have the American gangster background that Will Wade does and stay at McNeese. Like there's no way.
Yeah, I think I love that because, I mean, just like going back through that wormhole, it's like Andy Enfield, the fact that he has been there, stable presence for that long is actually crazy. I mean, college basketball does have kind of more like elder statesmen. There are also more teams. Rosters a little bit smaller. It's a little bit easier to put out fires in football. But, I mean, 11 years is crazy considering that guy came over from like, it was a weird like gamble hire at the time. So I love that for Lad of the Week. I have a last of the week. It's Dawn Staley. So stick with me here because it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster. Okay. So I think that the reason why Caitlin Clark and this season is so important for women's basketball is because Caitlin Clark is the first women's basketball player that I can remember that people hate her because she's a hooper. Like they don't hate her for some off-court thing. They don't hate her because of how she talks or looks or what she represents. She cooked LSU, and it made me upset, so I rooted against her. I like her as a person. I think she's cool. I feel like that.
But what about the F-bombs that she's said in a game before? Does that?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Like, that's my thing. I think sports should be competitive, right? That's a wild take, right?
I don't. I think everybody should be looking out for the kids, so agree to disagree on that.
Exactly. And you're kind of getting to exactly what I'm saying here, which is that, we don't really factor in how often women's athletes and coaches are put in this weird position where they have to be spokespeople for their entire existence, right? So, and where I'm going with this is right before this championship game, Dawn Staley got asked a question about like trans athletes, right? I'm not going to talk about that. Don't worry. But all I'm saying is, could you imagine that happening in the men's game? I say for the third week in a row. Could you imagine, John Calipari or one of these guys sitting up there? Probably wouldn't be him if it's championship podium, but one of these coaches, Nick Saban sitting there and getting asked, "What do you think about this? This rights issue, this political issue before a game?" They would simply say, "This is not the avenue for that," right? And I think that goes on to describe kind of the role that Dawn Staley has been forced into, which is that she is the leader of this sport, right? And in a season where it became Caitlin Clark, who is, never won a championship, versus LSU, who won the championship last year, barely, was not that good of a team this year, makes the Elite Eight, but just by the skin of their teeth. South Carolina has lost one game in 2 years. They have been smacking every single team they see. Yeah, they lost to Iowa last year in an upset, but Kim Mulkey, when she goes to sleep at night, has nightmares of Dawn Staley. That South Carolina team has embarrassed her over and over and over again, and yet who gets to be in front of the sport? And Paige Becker's talked about this. Caitlin Clark, Kim Mulkey. Not going to tell you why that is, but what I'm saying about Dawn Staley is that she has been able to represent herself, her university, her team, her players in such an amazing way. And just like the coverage, I'm not blaming the media, I'm not blaming specific reporters, but it's so underrated how dominant the South Carolina team has been all year.
It's unreal.
And we don't talk about it. We talk about Iowa, who's been worse than them all year. We talk about LSU, who, defending champion, a little bit more fair, but worse than them all year. And you look at the way that they, have reached every, winning the conference, beating LSU, avenging, these losses, getting up there. And this should be the story. It should have always been the story, honestly, because it was one loss against Iowa that defined their season last year. And I understand that's the sport, that's the dance. I get it. But the fact that Dawn Staley was able to shake back and get better, the fact that she was able to take an all-time team last year and make them learn, hey, you have a chance. It was about the revenge game for Caitlin Clark. It should have been about the revenge game for Dawn Staley, which it ended up being. And we got a great performance out of Iowa. We got a lot of sharing the ball, stuff like that. But I think that at the end of the day, I was never in doubt that Dawn Staley's team was going to win because of what she has been the entire time almost at South Carolina, how she's done this from her background as a player and then going, okay, well, now I'm just going to be this coach. And again, she looks cool. She wears the cool outfit. She does all this stuff, but coverage just hadn't been there for her. And I think it should be. I think that's what we should be talking about going into next year.
the coverage hasn't been there in that way because South Carolina has become UConn.
It's boring.
Many consider their dominance boring.
Yeah.
They look at Cardoso at 6'7", and her ability to impact the game in such a significant way, even though we have, ironically, we're recording this before the national championship, a couple of 7-footers who do really, really similar things. And there's been a lot said about like how boring Purdue is to be able to watch with Edie, but they look at that and they think, all right, well, yeah, like they're so inevitable. Never mind the fact that they had 5 new starters on that team and they just went undefeated. Yeah. And it actually, like, people forget they were only preseason number 6. They weren't preseason number 1. But I think it speaks to Dawn Staley's confidence that, look, like, everybody's entitled to feel like how they feel about the question that she answered about trans athletes. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to feel. But even if she, like, her response after giving her answer of like, I realize, or I think it was like right before she said it was, I realize this is going to put a lot of attention on me and like I'm going to take a lot of heat. And there are going to be a lot of people that are going to talk about what I'm about to say instead of the national championship. Even if she had said something that was a 1% approval rate of like, yeah, I think Hitler got a bad rap. Even if she had said that, the confidence that she has in herself and in her team to be able to like take everything in stride is unreal. Iowa gets off to that 10-0 start, and they show us a shot of her on the bench where Caitlin Clark is just starting to get cooking. And they show a shot of her on the bench, and she's just stoic. She's just sitting there like silent, not an ounce of panic. And you were right. You look up at halftime, and they're winning that game by 3 after Caitlin Clark had 18 points in the first quarter, more points in a quarter of a championship game than anybody's ever had. And South Carolina was winning that game at halftime. It's unreal, man. Like I did a story on this for SDS and was looking at some of the numbers of like, where was Summit at? Where was Gino at when they were 54? She's about to be 54. And she's got a ways to go. Like, it was Gino had 5 titles, I think, by that age. I think Summit had 6 or something like that. And obviously, like Gino, a lot of his, his place in college basketball is like late 50s, early 60s. But like she's won 3 since Gino won his last title, which is crazy. And I bet the casual fan doesn't even fully realize that. But that's how good she's been. And, would you bet against her getting to like 7, 8, 9 titles at this point? Now that she's already got 3. I mean, as long as she doesn't take the Kentucky job, like I think, look. I mean,
hey, I'll say it right now. A couple of those tournament losses, if they had Dawn Staley on the sidelines, they might have been better the last couple of years, all right?
I'm just saying, Kentucky fans could have used a coach that had that mindset instead of the Cal. You don't think that Dawn Staley could have prompted a better performance from Reed Shepherd, who looked like he was seeing ghosts out there. Meanwhile, Cal's just on the sideline freaking out. Like Jack Golke went on like Pardon My Take or the Yak or something like that. It was talking about how like they looked, or I think it was mostly sports. He looked at Cal like early in the game and he's freaking out. And he's like, we got him. We're good. Dawn Staley would have been over there sitting like in her swaggy sweatsuit or something like that. Probably just like bobbing her head or something like that. They could have been down double digits and she just would have been completely confident. Just totally different human beings.
Yeah, and I'll wrap this around because I didn't make the number one point I made, which is that it's interesting, like kind of the role that female athletes or women athletes like and coaches end up being, because like I said, these male coaches that are paid way more money, they have way more clout, they get way more resources. Again, it's always seen as unfair to ask them these like hard questions. But when you get to even near the top of the women's game, you start getting asked political questions immediately. And I think it's just how it is. And I think that it always has to be representative of something. You have to represent something to people, right? And I think that's it's not what it, I mean. It's good that she's able to handle it as well as she is, and it's cool when people want to do that. But like I said, it always turns into, oh, this cultural war was this is why nobody watches women's sports, or this is why this. And it's like, what if we, number one, appreciate the greatness, which is the point I made, but number two, appreciate that, like, as a stateswoman, as someone who has been at a microphone, she has been able to thread that needle really well. And of course, like any coach or any person, there's probably dumb stuff I've said. I just called Trey Mason Trey Benson. Like, we all make mistakes, right? Like, but at the end of the day, like, I think that's the thing, is that appreciating not just on the court, but what she's been outside of it, and the outsized responsibility that she's had to answer for stuff like that. She, like that question, she had nothing to do with, where it's just like, hey, I'm just here I'm on a championship. Like, I'm about to coach for a championship in a revenge game. And like I said, you ask that to any college football coach, they're like, send that guy to North Korea.
Stop asking move on to the next subject.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, she could have said, I'm not answering that question right now. So she chose to answer it. But that is why we talk about last of the week or lad of the week, because it's about taking on that pressure. It's about saying, okay, I am the person to ask this question. I'm prepared for this. You may not like what I have to say, but I'm prepared to say it. I'm going to take my time, and I think it's cool. No matter what you think, I think that's to be respected. Yeah.
Great reaction post-game, too. Like, to see her overcome the emotion like that. Really cool moment, man. I mean, South Carolina, at some point, like, it's so inevitable. It truly is, and that's probably why it's not going to be talked about as much, and as much as the Caitlin Clark LSU type storylines moving forward.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Really quick on that. We talked about, Angel Reese taunts people. She does the finger thing. She talks bleep, which I think is hilarious. Caitlin Clark, well, she's just as bad. She says the F word. What was the first thing Dawn Staley said? And not that either of those are correct. I want to be clear. That's not a characterization of those people. It's like what the media spun those two women out to be was a rivalry, and it never was, right? Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. But again, like you said, first thing she did was look at what Caitlin Clark, and I want to thank her for what she did for this game. It wasn't throwing shade. It wasn't doing whatever. Handling things the right way.
Yeah. There was a lot of good that I think came of this. It was entertaining. It was so entertaining to be able to watch this down the stretch. And some are saying that Indiana gave South Carolina its best game. Some are saying. I'm saying that. If others want to join in, that's perfectly fine as well. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on the app formerly known as Twitter, at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Goes Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.